learned faculty members, Madam Surbhi ji, and dear students. A very good morning to all of you. Now let us recapitulate. Till now we have discussed the ingredients of various cybercrime in general and gendered cybercrime in particular. The safety precautions and security measures to prevent the gendered cyber violence has also been discussed. Now a situation comes. In spite of taking all precautionary measures and adopting all security controls, if the user woman or girl happen to become the victim of the cyber violence, then what will she do? She is in a fix. That is the situation. So, in this session, we will discuss the procedure to get the legal redress. As we have already discussed that Section 78 of the IT Act 2000 gives the power to investigate the cyber offences only to the police. The police officer, of and above the rank of inspector, can investigate the case of cyber offence. So the cyber offence should always be reported to the police. Those cyber police stations are also created in each state where police officers who are specialized and trained in cybercrime investigation are posted. But the victim need not to go into the search of the cyber police station. She should approach the local police station and submit her report in writing to the police officer present at the police station of her area. She should always keep a carbon copy of the photostat of the report which she has submitted at the police station. And after submitting the report in the police station, the victim should get the copy of FIR register. That's the normal procedure. But there is a general complaint that the police station does not register the case by one pretext or other and ask the complainant to bring some more information or wait for some time or find faults with the complainant herself and avoids the registration of the case. The victim feels harassed and stops pursuing the case, or she reduces her online presence or stop posting her opinion on certain issues altogether. Dear students, in such a case, the proper course of the victim should adopt is that if she does not get the copy of FIR or the receipt of her complaint, she should note down the name and rank of the person to whom the report was given and time also, at what time it was given to him. After coming from the police station, she should send an email mentioning the details of the incident, date and time, the report given, and name and rank of the person who received the complaint at that police station. The photocopy of the report submitted at the police station should be attached along with the email. Request should be made in the email that the case be registered and she should be informed about the FIR number and updates of the case. That request should be made in the email. A carbon copy CC be forwarded to the supervisor officer, ACP, DCP, the area DSP or SP also. The email address of the SHO, DSP, SP, IG, DG or ACP or DCP are available on the police website of the state and the district concerned. So there is no problem. And there may be a question in mind, how the email will help you in the registration of the case. So if you see the legal status as per section 13 of the IT Act, again we refer the IT Act, section 13 says the dispatch of email occurs when it enters a computer resource outside the control of the originator. And the receipt of the email occurs at the time when the email enters the computer resource of the receiver. So it is mentioned in that is the legal position as per section 13 of the IT Act. So when the report for lodging the FIR is sent by the victim on the email address of the police station, it is legally presumed that the SHO received the information the moment it entered in the computer system of the police station. In cyber offences, the offender attacks the victim by using the computer resource, means thereby the computer system, the computer network, which also include internet, data computer, database or software. As we have already discussed, during the process of trajectory of cyber offense, service provider who is an intermediary receives the information of the cyber attack sent by the offender. When the offender sends the cyber attack messages, So it goes via the service provider. So the service provider may have transmitted the attack directly to the victim, or might have stored first, might have stored and afterwards transmitted the attack to the victim. So when the victim receives the cyber attack through the intermediary or service provider, the control of technology of transmitting the message is with the service provider. The victim should always report about the cyber violence in the reporting section of the service provider, who has the technical control. Why? Because he has the technical control over the sender's account and can immediately redress the victim by blocking or removing the cyber attack or the violence content from circulation of the network. The police, as per section 69 of the IT Act, police has also got the powers to block and all that. The order can direct any intermediary to block for access by the public any information generated, transmitted, received, or stored or hosted in the computer resource in the interest of preventing incitement to commission of the cognizable offense. If the intermediary fails to comply with such direction, the police can prosecute the intermediary for an offense which is punishable with imprisonment up to 7 years and also with fine. So police has also got the powers. Now similarly, under section 69 of the IT Act, the police officer, in the interest of preventing incitement to the commission of any cognizable offense or for the investigation of any offense, may by order call upon the subscriber or the intermediary and ask to provide access to or secure access to the computer resource generating, receiving, or transmitting and storing the information, and provide assistance to intercept, monitor, decrypt any information. That is the power given to the police under section 69. If the intermediary fails to assist in compliance of that order, he can also be prosecuted by the police for the offense punishable with imprisonment up to 7 years and with fine. So the preference of reporting should always be given to the reporting at the portal of the service provider first, and simultaneously to the police. There is also an online national cybercrime portal for reporting the cyber offences. That is www.cybercrime.gov.in. So it is suggested that the victim should report to all the three platforms simultaneously, and in order of preference be given the service provider first, then the police station, and then online national cybercrime portal. The perception of general public that maybe the police is mixed up with the cyber criminals. That is a strong point. So, learned academicians and dear students, my observation as an insider in the police department for 35 long years, and prior to and after 30 years of outsider, is that the police officer, any police officer you may take, he wants to be known by the name of an excellent and successful cybercrime investigator. But the problem is that he is not fully aware with the trajectory, the ingredients, the technology, the legal provisions of investigation, and cyber forensics of this newly created cybercrime. The cyber violence is a virtual reality in the virtual space. Now we'll discuss what's the problem after all. So it's the case of virtual reality, and it is in the virtual space. So in the investigation of the case of virtual reality, the evidence available is in electronic or the digital form, which is virtual in nature, and that too in the virtual space and the virtual devices. So the investigation of cybercrime requires that the police officer should be expert in collecting the relevant electronic or digital evidence which is intangible and virtual in nature. So he should be able to, the police officer investigating the case should be able and have excellence in identifying and to identify, extract digital evidence from the digital devices, and should also be able to transfer, preserve, analyze, interpret, convert into document and also produce in the court of law with the help of reviewed technologies, procedures and well-tested tools in such a way that the integrity of the evidence remains intact and the evidence is submitted in the court is also admissible in the court of law. Dear students, the investigation in broader sense is the collection of relevant, reliable and admissible evidence, and the administration of justice is totally dependent on this evidence. As we know, the legal mandate regarding the evidence in the Evidence Act is 1872. As per the Evidence Act, the evidence of the fact is of two types. First, the oral evidence which the court permits to make before it, and second, the document evidence. As per section 60 of the Act, when you will read the Act, you will come to know there is section 60 that directs that only direct oral evidence of the relevant fact is admissible in the evidence, meaning thereby the evidence of fact seen, then evidence of the person who says he saw it, of the facts could be heard, it must be the evidence of the person who heard it. If it is a fact which is perceived by the organs of senses, then the oral evidence of the person who perceived it. In the case of cybercrime investigation, the evidence of the facts perceived by the organs of senses is many times enveloped with the virtual and augmented reality, meaning thereby the facts perceived by the person with his organ of senses. What are the organ of senses? The eye, ear, tongue, nose and touch. These are the 5 organs of senses. Then to which he believes as real may be a virtual reality or an augmented reality created in the 3-dimensional virtual space with the help of computer resource and tools. So that is the beauty of this. Similarly, for the documentary evidence, the documents with the primary evidence only are legally admitted as per section 65 of the Evidence Act. In case of cybercrime, the documented evidence which is prepared with the help of computer technology converting digital into the analog. So that is the computer technology. It is converted the digital into the analog, and since it is converted, so it is not primary, it's a secondary evidence. So the relevancy, the reliability and legal admissibility of both the oral as well as the documentary evidence is a big legal issue in the appreciation of digital evidence in the administration of justice. This is because the evidence in the form of data or information is prepared, processed, received, sent and stored with the help of computer resource technology. Then for the admissibility of electronic or the digital evidence, as per section 65, capital B2 of the Act, 4 conditions are required to be fulfilled. The conditions are that first, the computer output was produced by the computer which was regularly used to store and process, and it was under the lawful control of a person. So the police officer, investigation officer has to take the certificate of this. Second, the information was regularly fed in the computer in the ordinary course. Third, the computer was operating properly. And fourth, the information reproduced is the information fed into the computer in the ordinary course. Now these are the 4 conditions. It should be satisfied then, and only this evidence, the digital evidence, is admission in the court of law. Since the electronic evidence can be easily changed or amended with the help of the computer technology, you can easily amend it. So the admissibility of the electronic record depends on the certificate of reliability under section 65 capital B4. And section 65 capital B2 gives certain conditions to be satisfied, and section 65B capital B4 that requires the certain certificates to be given along with the digital evidence when we put them in the court. So the evidence which is submitted along the digital evidence, the certificate required should be about 3 things. First thing, identify the electronic record containing the statement and describing the manner in which it was produced. Number two, giving particulars of digital evidence devices involved in the production of the electronic record. And third, dealing with any of the matters to which the four conditions of section 65 B2 relate, as we have already discussed. So देखिए, जो दिक्कत क्या आती है, पुलिस ऑफिसर नॉर्मली ये कहते हैं कि साहब दे आर रिलेक्टेंट टू रजिस्टर द केस because the investigation is very ticklish. It has got a special procedure. They have to identify the digital evidence which are there in the digital devices. First, you have to identify the evidence. Then you have to collect the evidence. You have to seize the evidence. Then you have to transfer the evidence. You have to procure it. Then you have to analyze the evidence. And evidence is submitted in the court in the form of a document. So you have to change the electronic or digital evidence into the document, and then you have to submit in the court of law. And during this whole process, the integrity should be intact. That is one thing. And second thing, it should be the whatever evidence you collect, it should be legally admissible in the court of law. So for this, there is a section 65 B2 and B4. They say B says you have to satisfy certain conditions, and then these are the four conditions we just discussed. And 65B capital B4 says you have to give the certificate along with the digital evidence, otherwise it is not admissible in the court of law. Now, when see the legal admissibility of the electronic record, it is, as we see, it is quite technical and procedure, which is to be followed by the investigative officer in the legal redress system. Another important procedure in legal redress is that most of the cases, the evidence is circumstantial. It is the circumstantial evidence. Nobody saw it. Nobody was present there. It was in the absence. These were the circumstances. So, and regarding the circumstantial evidence, dear students, the apex court has given observation in various cases about the requirement of and the reliability of the circumstantial evidence. And I'll quote one case, cite one case. Honorable Supreme Court in the case of Sarad Birdichan Sarda versus State of Maharashtra has given certain observations. And the observations are, they are given the 5 golden principles which constitute the pencil of the proof of the proof to be followed in the case based on the circumstantial evidence. So these are the 5 fundamental things. And the 5 golden principles which we just discussed are required for the reliability of the circumstantial evidence, and so also applicable to the cyber offences as observed by the Honorable Apex Court. And number 1, the conclusion of the guilt drawn should be fully established. Number 2, the fact established should be consistent only with the hypothesis of the guilt of the accused. That is to say, they should not be explainable on any other hypothesis of the guilt of the accused. Number 3, the circumstances should be of a conclusive nature and tendency. Number 4, they should exclude every other possible hypothesis except the one out to be proved. And 5th is that the chain of evidence should be so complete as not to leave any reasonable ground for the conclusion consistent with the innocence of the accused, and must show that in all human probability the act must have been done by the accused. So these are the 5 golden principles. So we summarize the legal redress the cybercrime requires, that while investigating these cases, the police officer should observe the 4 conditions laid down in section 65 capital B2, 3 certificates under section 65B capital 4, and 5 golden principles of reliability of circumstances to be followed for the admissibility of the digital evidence in the cyber violence cases. Dear students, the onus is on you, young would-be law graduates, to make aware with the cyber violence and its legal redress not only to the society but also to the three wings of the administration of justice system, so that the trust of the victim of cyber violence is re-established and the victim may start approaching the authority for legal redress. Thank you. Thank you very much. Jai Hind, Jai Bharat.